What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gage. Welcome to the channel. Today, I am happy to be showing off my Bujin deck profile from hat format. So this is kind of taking a time capsule back into the year of 2014, where we are in essentially the peak of the Xyz format to explore a alternate format, an alternate time wizard format known as hat format. This is a very unique point in time in which there are a lot of many different strategies that were viable to be able to use. The game was a lot slower and there was a lot more interplay back in the day. So it is nice to be able to just kind of take a step back, look into Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and to be able to enjoy an alternate format in which the game was just different. I have found that it has been a lot of fun to be able to explore. I do think that there are a lot of viable decks, and that there is still a lot to this format that I think is worth pursuing. So this is my take on one of my favorite decks in the format. It is a lot more straightforward and is very newcomer friendly, and that is Bujin's, which is very much more of a kind of protect the style kind of variety of deck. And I highly recommend it if you are considering getting into the format, just because a lot of the cards are affordable, and it just so happens to be really fun and relatively simple to learn. So without further ado, if you are fans of content like this, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll hop into the profile. So I am choosing to, of course, play 3 copies of Bujin Yamato, which is one of the most important pieces of the deck. A lot of the deck centers around essentially just protect the castle, Yamato being the castle in this instance, just because it is really good at generating advantage every single turn. Because once per turn during the end phase, you can add a Bujin monster from the deck to your hand and then send a card from your hand to the graveyard, which is really nice. It allows you to sculpt your hand in, one of the ways, in essentially any way that you need it. You could either add, a crane, which acts as kind of a, kind of colute, or an honest, so to speak. You can go ahead and then, add a hare or turtle that you can go ahead and send to the graveyard. So we'll talk a little bit about those monsters once we get to them. But just know that Yamato, is going to be generating you, advantage every single turn. And so you really want to make sure that you have access to it. So we are also playing 3 copies of Bujingi Crane, which is just a really nice target to be able to search off of the Yamato. It says during damage calculation, if a Beast Warrior Bujin, which your Yamato is falls under that category, battles an opponent's monster. So that means either if that you attack them or if they attack you, you could send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and the attack of your monster becomes double its original attack during that damage calculation only. So that is really nice for being able to make sure that, if your opponent is trying to battle into the Yamato or even into your Susanoo, which is one of your extra deck monsters, then it ensures that they will survive that battle. So Crane is really nice because your opponent always has to respect it. They never know if you're going to have access to it, because there are going to be times where maybe you don't need to search it because you hard opened the Crane, in which case it means that now, if you do have Yamato, you can go ahead and use its searches for, other relevant things. So Crane is just really nice. You definitely want to max out on 3 copies. I'm choosing to tech 1 copy of Bujin Mikazuchi. It's really nice because it says when a Beast Warrior monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave. So if it your opponent does just so happen to destroy the Yamato, this will trigger. You can then special summon this card from the hand. And once per turn during the end phase, if a Bujin monster was sent from your hand to your graveyard this turn, while you controlled this face-up card, you can go ahead and add 1 Bujin Speller Trap from your deck to your hand. The only relevant one that we are playing is going to be Bujin Carnation, which we will talk about later in the profile. But yeah, this is just really solid all around. This on top of the Yamato is just really nice to have on the field, just because, on the end phase, your opponent, you're going to end up adding and then sending a card off of the Yamato effect, which will trigger the Mikazuchi to go ahead and special and add your Bujin Carnation directly from the deck to your hand, which is just a really nice combo to make sure that you have access to. There are other ways, if your Crane ends up going to the graveyard, because your one of your monsters ended up battling, that will also trigger the Mikazuchi. So just, keep in mind that this the Mikazuchi can trigger in a multitude of different ways. So yeah, I like it. It's an additional extender just in case, and it, it is has the ability to search one of the most powerful spells that the deck has to offer. I'm also choosing to tech one copy of Bujin Hirume. It says it cannot be special summoned and it must be cannot be normal summoned. It must be special summoned by banishing one Bujin monster from your grave. And if this card, which was summoned this way, is destroyed by your opponent's battle, by battle or card effect and sent from the field to the grave, both players have a hand. You could discard one card and your opponent discards one card. I don't necessarily find myself using that effect all that much, but I do use it as an extender. I've gone around with maybe 1 to 2 copies, but I haven't pulled the trigger on a second just because it's not normal summonable. It would be different if it could be, but the fact that you really want to utilize a lot of the Bujins that do just so happen to be in your grave for their own effects, so you don't necessarily want to be banishing a lot of them either. So this is a tricky card. It's obviously really strong in getting an additional body in a pinch, but that's why I just don't want to play even more copies. I do think that it is respectable to be able to play at 1. It is a searchable Beast Warrior off of the Tenki, so it's just an additional target if you already have access to things like Yamato and Mikazuchi. But it's just nice to have if you need an additional body in a pinch. So for the ones that you actually want to see in your grave, we're playing 2 copies of Bujinki Turtle. This is a level 4 beast that says during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated that targets a Bujin you control, you can banish this card from your graveyard to negate the effect. So if your opponent is trying to use an extra deck monster that just so happens to target one of your monsters, maybe they're utilizing a trap card, like compulsory evacuation device, fiendish chain, your opponent's breakthrough skills, this is really going to stop all of those cards to make sure that you are protecting your Yamato and some of your other Bujins as much as possible. So Turtle is a card that you definitely want to ensure is going in the graveyard as fast as possible. On top of that, we are also playing 2 copies of Bujinki Hair, which says during either player's turn, you can banish this from the grave, target a Beast Warrior Bujin you control, and it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. So that is really nice for ensuring that your cards are sticking around. Obviously, that doesn't play around bouncing. It doesn't play around, cards that might remove the card in other ways. But most of the time, battle and card effects are going to be the most primary ways that people will use to be able to remove things in the format. And so Hair being able to protect your monsters, from being removed in that way is just really, really nice. And I am teching 1 copy of Keelan, which says if you control a Beast Warrior Bujin, you can banish this from the grave, target a face-up card your opponent controls, destroy that target. Really nice for being able to destroy, maybe certain floodgates, just popping maybe some sticky monsters that might be difficult to remove otherwise. So it's just nice to be able to have in a pinch if you need access to destruction. And since it is triggering from the graveyard, there aren't too many things that can actually interact with this. So that's it for the main Bujins. I am choosing to play a few other monsters. I'm choosing to play 3 copies of Max C. This is one of those cards where I do think in this deck in particular, it shines just because you really want to, a lot of the times your opponent is going to, first off, there's just a lot of decks in the format that have to special summon in general if they want to do anything relevant, especially if they rely on going into the extra deck to do anything. Top of mind, I'm thinking of decks like Sylvan, they're Dragon Rulers that special summon a lot. So there's a lot of decks that just kind of have to special summon. So first and foremost, that deals with those. But even decks that special summon an infrequent amount of times, I don't mind that this just ends up being like an Upstart Goblin, right? At the end of the day, it's more so there as a contingency to prevent your opponent from going off too hard. You are playing so many powerful cards that they are discouraged from giving you as many draws as possible. So, even if it works in preventing your opponent from popping off, that will be in your benefit because at the end of the day, if you're able to stick a Yamato and you're constantly adding cards, sending cards to the graveyard, and loading up and sculpting the hand that you weigh in the way that you need, then that just means that you are gaining more advantage and more tempo than your opponent is. So Maxi does a job in, if it does just so happen to get a couple of draws off of a deck that can't play around it, great. but even if it just ends up being a preventative measure, that is also just as good, in my opinion. So yeah, I love Maxi. It's one of those things where this is even though it's a slower format, and it is not necessarily a requirement and not necessarily like a silver bullet against every single strategy, it is still nice to have just in case. I'm also choosing to play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. So again, this is a protect the style castle, kind of deck. So you really want to, make sure that you have as many cards that you can prevent your opponent from making pushes to remove your cards on the field. And Effect Veiler is just one of the best ways at being able to do so. So yeah, I think that maxing out on this has been beneficial in saving me in so many ways. And I am choosing to tech 2 copies of DD Crow. Cards in the graveyard are actually more prominent in this format. There are also a lot of cards that interact with cards in the graveyard. For example, you could use this to hit targets off of something like the Call of the Haunted. You could use this to hit soul charge targets. There are so many things that this can hit that I do think it's warranted to play at least 2 copies. This could certainly be swapped out, especially it certainly does depend on the meta, and is deck dependent. But I found more oftentimes than not, I do feel comfortable at least having the 1 copy just in, the 2 copies in there just in case. And for the last monster, I am choosing to tech 1 copy of Honest. During the main phase, you could return this face-up card from the field to the hand, which is nice if you just end up going into Honest Beatdown, in which case, if this is the only monster, you could summon it, swing for 11, return it to the hand. Happens sometimes. It's funny. Not ideal, but, you got to do what you got to do. But you also have the ability where during the damage step, when a light monster that you control battles, which is pretty much every single one of your main deck Bujins, as well as your extra deck monsters, you can then go ahead and send this card to the graveyard, and it gains attack equal to the attack of the opponent's monster it's battling. This is particularly broken with Susanoo in particular. We'll talk about this more once we get to the extra deck, but this has the ability to attack all of your opponent's monsters once each. So if you do have your Susanoo and you hit attach it with an Honest in the damage step, you are going to be gaining the attack of the monster that it's battling until the end of the turn. So that means you'll be able to attack all of your opponent's monsters with that buff in place, meaning that if those monsters are in an attack position and you are gaining a lot of attack off of the Honest effect, that could sometimes just end up killing your opponent right then and there. So, it's a one of, you're not going to see it all the time. It's not searchable, but it's one of those things where if it does come up, it is nice to have. So that's it for the monsters. Of course, we're going to talk about some of the spells that we're playing, and one of the ones that just makes sense is 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. When it's activated, you can add a level 4 lower Beast Warrior from the deck to your hand, and then all Beast Warrior monsters you control gain 100 attack. So, that attack gain is actually pretty relevant in this format. It means that your Yamato will then end up being 1900, which is a bit stickier, not a lot of attack thresholds will be able to just, be able to normal summon and then attack over that right away. And of course, if you activate 2 Tenkis, I mean, now you're just getting an additional buff there, putting your Yamato at a respectable 2K. So it's one of those consistency pieces that, if you have Yamato, if you don't have Yamato, then you're going to want to grab it off of the Tenki. But if you do already have the Yamato, then usually one of my go-tos is to be able to go for the Mikazuchi. And if I have the Mikazuchi, I'll go for the Hirame. So, you've got some decent targets there. So yeah, Tenki is just a really nice card to have as consistency and to be able to boost the attack of your monsters. And as I alluded to earlier, we are playing 2 copies of Bujin Carnation. I'm not playing 3 just because, first off, it's searchable, right? The fact that Mikazuchi can grab it is always nice. So I never found myself desperately needing this card. But the issue is that it also requires a very specific set of things to happen. So let's just go over it. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, target a Bujin in your grave, one of your banished Bujins, special summon both targets. They can't be used as an Xyz material for an Xyz summon, except for the Xyz summon of a Beast Warrior or Winged Beast. So because obviously this is a very, very strong extender in a grind, in which case you do not have a card on your field, a monster, your opponent controls a monster, and you have a Bujin in the grave as well, and one that is banished. So it's one of those situations where you definitely want to have it because it can be, if all of those conditions are met, then this can be a really nice way to be able to get back into the game. But it's absolutely not necessary, just because it really does require for you to be kind of on the back foot in order for you to utilize it for the most part. So yeah, it's really good in the grind game. That's why I do play the 2 copies. I think 3 is overkill. And then for some consistency, we are playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. A lot of the time, since we're just normal summoning and passing, we can afford to play Duality, as it doesn't really limit us all that much. You reveal the top 3 cards of the deck, add 1 of them to the hand, shuffle the rest back, and then you can't special summon during the turn you activate this card. So again, this is just really nice consistency. You really want to see Yamato as much as possible. So Pot of Duality is going to be one of those additional consistency boosters to ensure that you see it. And it's one of those things where if you do have access to the Yamato, then that's why we're playing such a myriad of different hand traps too. So if you end up, revealing, one of the Maxis, the Veilers, a lot of the times I'll just go ahead and end up grabbing some of those. And we're also playing powerful, other powerful spells and traps in the deck as well. So I'll show those off now. We are playing 1 copy of Dark Hole. This deck can have a really difficult time with just kind of breaking boards if your opponent does so just so happen to have many different threats in play. That could be very difficult to deal with. So sometimes you just need a nuke to kind of be able to equalize and level the playing field. And Dark Hole is just a really good card at being able to do so. I'm also playing 1 copy of Mystical Space Typhoon. Spells and traps are really powerful in this format, and so you want to be able to just have a card that can, just be able to deal with one of your opponent's cards that might be detrimental. If you go to summon a Yamato and it gets bottomless, that can be very painful to deal with. So MST, definitely want to have at least 1 copy. And then for the traps, I'm choosing to play 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill. Again, just being able to have Effect Negation is really nice. I'm not playing 3 just because I am playing the Veiler, but Breakthrough Skill is just really nice to have. I'm also playing 2 copies of Fiendish Chain. This act, being something that not only negates the effects of a monster, but also makes it so that they can't attack, is just yet another way in which we can ensure that our Yamato is going to stay on the field. And then I'm playing just a suite of all the most busted individual trap cards in the format. I'm playing 1 copy of Solemn Warning to stop summons. Again, Bottomless Trap Hole to be able to, again, stop summons. Compulse, really good against extra deck monsters. If your opponent does extend to the point where, they're going into an extra deck monster, being able to just compulse it back to the extra deck, and now they lost out on so much advantage is just insane. And there are going to be instances, and maybe you want to compulse your own Yamato or one of your own monsters in the event that you want to be able to protect it, from something that your opponent might, one of your opponent's interruptions. And of course, Torrential Tribute, again, the deck can have a very difficult time with, breaking, boards. So maybe there are going to be instances in which the Torrential can be used as just a mass board wipe to kind of, again, level the playing field. So that's it for the main deck. I'm just going to quickly go over the extra deck. One of the most powerful cards in the deck by far, and one of the most powerful boss monsters in this format is Bujin Susanoo. It requires 2 level 4 Bujins. It can attack all of your opponent's monsters once each. So again, that is just powerful in being able to, clear your opponent's monsters. In conjunction with Honest, it's great, but of course with the Crane, it's also nice as well. It means that there's really not going to be anything that this can't attack over, assuming that you have the Crane or the Honest. And it says once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material and either take a Bujin from the deck and add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. So if you don't have the Crane, you can go ahead and add it right there. Or if you think that you'll need additional protection, you could go ahead and send a Hare or the Turtle to the graveyard as well. So this is really nice at being able to, you can only control 1 Susanoo at a time, but that's perfectly okay. Most of the time, 1 is enough to, get the job done. And it's good at, breaking boards. It's really good at generating advantage. And most of the time, if you get to the point where you're able to stick this with a couple back row, maybe even some hand traps, then you are going to be in a very strong position. I'm playing checking 1 copy of Bujin Kagutsuchi. 2 level 4 Beast Warriors are needed to make it, and when it's Xyz summon, you can send the top 5 cards of the deck to the grave. And then this card gains 100 attack for each Bujin card sent to the grave by this effect. We're playing so many Bujins that the probability of you sending something is fairly high. And of course, it potentially loads the grave with, turtles and hares, which would then be used to be able to protect the Kagutsuchi even further. And if a Bujin Beast Warrior would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you could detach an Xyz material from this card instead of destroying one of those monsters. So it's a really sticky, nice protection. It's 2,500 attack, so it's natively a bit stronger than the Susanoo. Most of the time you're going to go into the Susanoo, but this is just a nice alternate option to go into instead. I'm also checking one copy of Bujin Tsukuyomi. It doesn't come up all that often, but it is nice to have. It just requires 2 level 4 light monsters, and once per turn you can detach a material, send your entire hand to the grave, and if you do, draw 2 cards. So it's just really nice in those instances in which maybe the cards in your hand aren't really doing much for you, and you want to just be able to it's especially nice if you just have like one card in your hand. That way you're at least plussing. But being able to draw 2 cards can help you to get into cards that might be able to help get you back into the game. And then if this card leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you could target a level 4 Beast Warrior Bujin from the grave up to the number of Xyz materials this card had on the field, and then special summon those targets. So just really nice floating effect. Like I said, it doesn't really come up too much, so honestly, it is a card that I have considered cutting, but it seems like it could have potential. I just have to find game states in which, its effect could be relevant, but it's nice to have just in case. And then just an absolute sweet. So like I mentioned, this is a premier format where all of some of the best Xyz monsters are available to us. And so we're just playing a suite of really, really good monsters. We are playing, of course, Exciton Knight, really good for, once per turn during the main phase. If your opponent has more total cards in their hand than you do, you can just detach a material, destroy all other cards on the field. So really nice at being able to equalize the board. Like I mentioned, this deck can have difficulty with breaking boards, but Exciton Knight is very much, kind of a backup plan, in the event that we need to be able to kind of come back in the game. I'm also teching one copy of Starly's Paladynamo. It requires 2 level 4 light monsters, and once per turn you can detach 2 Xyz materials, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, its attack becomes 0, and if it does, its effects are negated. And when this card is destroyed by an opponent's card, by battle or card effect, you can draw a card. So this is just a solid boss monster all around to be able to go into, not only because it can potentially, get rid of a really sticky threat, but if it's removed, you get a nice consolation in drawing a card. So we're playing plenty of light monsters, so it's easy to make. I'm also playing Giant Hand, which I believe it was a prize card at this time. I'm not sure if it was reprinted yet, but one of the beauties of playing a retro format is that cards that have been reprinted since that heyday, that specific format, are now usable. So Giant Hand is just really nice. Requires 2 level 4s. When a monster effect is activated on your opponent's field, quick effect, detach 2 materials, target an effect monster, and while this is face up on the field, that effect monster's effects are negated, and it can't change its battle position. So yeah, this is really nice in the event that, if you really have access to getting into a bunch of level 4s, then like, if you're playing blind and you're not exactly entirely sure what you're going into, then just kind of going into a Giant Hand is kind of like just a nice safe option. So yeah, doesn't come up all that often, but it is nice to be able to have, some effect negation in a pinch. I'm also playing number 50, Black Ship of Corn. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material, target a face-up monster with attack less than or equal to this card, send it to the graveyard. So this is just really nice for being able to, it also inflicts 1,000 damage to your opponent. The burn is nice. Sometimes that can come up for game, but it's nice to be able to just have kind of non-destruction removal, because it just sends to the graveyard. So it does get around certain protection effects that would be difficult to get around otherwise, assuming that the monster has attack less than the Black Ship, which 2,100, that's fairly high. We're also playing one copy of Silent Honor Arc, detach 2 materials, target a special summon monster your opponent controls in face-up attack position, and attach it to this card as Xyz material, and if it would be destroyed, you get to detach an Xyz material instead. So really good for removing problematic threats, being really sticky because of its own protection effect, solid boss monster all around. I'm also playing one Karen Gorgon, the anti-luminescent knight. During either player's turn, when a card effect is activated that targets exactly one card on the field, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, target another card on the field that would be an appropriate target for that card or an effect, and that card or effect now targets the new target. So there are so many cards in this format that target. You saw so many different trap cards that target. There are so many, the hands are very prominent in this format and they target. So the thing about anti-luminescent knight is that it is very specific. So you, when you go into it, you want to ensure that you're in a game state in which you know that your opponent's only option is to be able to target you, in which case, depending on the game state, this can be very much a game changer. So yeah, I do still enjoy it. It doesn't come up as often, but when I see a situation in which it could be very powerful, I certainly at least consider it. I'm also playing 103 Ragna Zero. Once per turn during either player's turn, detach an Xyz material from this card. Target a face-up attack position monster your opponent controls whose current attack is different from its original attack. Destroy it and draw a card. So this came up in Battle and Boxer. Sometimes lead yoke can be difficult to deal with, and I found that once it does get its attack gain effect, you can go ahead and maybe use the attack with the Ragna Zero, use its effect, and then go ahead and essentially attempt to remove it, and then you can essentially get rid of all of lead yoke's protections, all of the Xyz material from that in one go. So, maybe that's not the most efficient way to be able to deal with that, but I have found that there are very specific circumstances in which Ragna Zero still comes up, so I would rather have it in my extra deck than not. I'm also playing one Rhapsody in Berserk. You can target a face-up Xyz material that you control. You can equip this monster to that target, and it gains 1200 attack. But realistically, you are using it for the detach and Xyz material. Target a face-up card. Target one card in your opponent's grave. Banish it. So a lot of really good cards that are can be utilized in the graveyard in hat format. So Rhapsody is nice at being able to remove those cards. I'm also playing one copy of Crazy Box. Honestly, it doesn't really come up. It is just a really strong level 3000 attack, level 4 monster. It's just fun to have. I've never gone into it, but it's a nice option if you're feeling crazy. And then the last card I'm playing is one copy of Heartland Draco, which says while you control a face-up spell, your opponent cannot target this card for attacks, but once per turn, you can detach a material from this card, and it can attack your opponent directly, but other monsters cannot attack. So, you control face-up spells sometimes because of the fact that you are playing the Tenki, so the protection effect can come up, but you're really just using this for being able to attack directly in the event that you have game. So, guys, that is pretty much it for the profile. Hopefully that you have learned something, or if you did just so happen to play this format back in the day or even recently, it's just a trip down memory lane to be able to kind of show some respects and pay homage to Yu-Gi-Oh's history. And I've been having a lot of fun exploring some of these alternate formats. So guys, that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you are fans of content like this, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, GG.